Welcome to College Recruiter, where we believe that every student and recent grad deserves a great career. I am Anna Peters, and I'm joined by two lovely people, Pam Baker, who is founder and CEO of Journeous. Welcome, Pam.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And we're joined by Robert Shindell, who is president and CEO of Intern Bridge. And both of my guests today are very passionate about helping young professionals build their careers, and they have decades full of advice, right? Am I right? For interns to really make the most out of their summer internship, which is our topic today. As you begin your summer internship, how should you be viewing this? How should your experience, how you should shape your experience and what you should get out of it, even maybe if it's not exactly what you hoped. So the first question I have for both of you is, broadly, how should interns who are starting their program this summer, what is the best attitude to have going in? How should they view this whole summer?
Yeah, so I can kick it off, Anna. And I, actually to your intro, I would say sometimes, particularly if things don't go as expected, I think some of the best learnings are to be had from those experiences. And then to your question, the way I would ask interns to kind of head into the summer is with a lot of curiosity. And there's so much to be learned from the scope of their role, from the industry, from the environment, from the people that they're working with. I would say go in with intentionality. What do I want to get out of this experience? What do I want to learn? Be curious, be open-minded, and then also make sure that at the conclusion of that internship, you reflect back to what did I want to get out of this, and how did that go? What do I learn so that I can apply that to my next decision moving forward?
Absolutely, and I think you hit on one key point, and that is, kind of thinking about what is it that I want to get out of this. And I think it's okay to be a little selfish and come up with that kind of laundry list of things. I want, as an intern, I want to experience these things. And one of the things that we've been telling students who are participating in internships for years is that they have to have a plan. And plan in this situation is an acronym: prepare for the journey, launch into action, adjust as you go, and network with those who know. So that idea of preparing for the journey is that even before you start or within that first week, really identifying those selfish goals that you want to accomplish. And I think that is absolutely fine, and you should be doing that. But also it means, understanding more about the organization. Make sure that you do, yes, you did your, research during the interview stage. Don't let it stop there. Continue learning about the organization, your department, the function that you're going to have. Adjust as you go. Things are never going to go as perfectly as you plan them. But be flexible and know that, at some point during your experience, you may have to just adjust on the fly, and don't let that get you down. Or launch into action would be the second one, and that is just go at it with that just really positive attitude. Don't just sit there and wait for things to happen, but be proactive and make the things happen, especially those things that are on that list that you developed of the things that you want to achieve. And then adjust as you go. As I mentioned, things aren't always going to go the way that you want them to. And then network with those who know. And that is really seeking out those key individuals within the organization and make yourself known. Introduce yourself. Say, hi, my name's Robert Shindell. I'm interning here this summer. I'm really excited about it, and I would love to sit down and visit with you about the things that you do in your everyday life here at XYZ company. So develop your plan.
And Robert, I want to just touch on your the adjust as you go, because I would argue that there is a lot to be gained from those adjustments.
Oh, yeah.
Those as folks are thinking about jobs after school, those are some of the richest experiences, right? I thought it was going to be A, it ended up being E, and we had to shift gears, do something different. And those as you think about some of the competencies that NACE has brought up, that helps with critical thinking and problem solving and creativity and initiative.
Absolutely.
And so looking at those as huge opportunities instead of, oh, I had something on my list, I didn't get to accomplish it. There's a lot of rich value in those experiences.
Absolutely. And
if your internship goes as exactly as you planned, there was probably a missed opportunity in there somewhere.
You're absolutely right. And some of the, the students that I've worked with as they've come back from their internship experiences, they will communicate, that it was the worst experience of my life. And sometimes that is the best learning experience that one can have.
So frustration is a good thing.
Yes.
Depending on what the situation is. So, I mean, it's easy to say, here's my next question for you guys. I mean, we all know easier said than done, of course. And planning is a good thing. Having a list or a set of goals is a good thing. But for somebody who is ramping up, what is your advice for that period? So there's, you don't know anyone yet, you're nervous, you're intimidated perhaps, you don't, maybe unfortunately you don't know what is expected of you. What is the trickiest part of ramping up, and what's your advice for interns?
Yeah, go ahead, Robert.
Well, I think the trickiest part to ramping up in that scenario, and I'm not quite sure, hey, Anna, I don't think the video's flipping over.
Oh, well, it's working for me.
Okay.
So that's the only
That's the only thing that counts. All right. So in that ramp up stage, I think that really is in that preparation and that, preparing for the journey, in understanding that this is really a new world. I mean, in our research, we found that over 80% of students who are doing their internship, it is their first working experience outside of the home. And that's a real different scenario than previous generations of college students who have moved through and moved into the world of work. And it can be scary. And I think the best way to prepare for that is to really just know that the company really, you're there because they want you there. You're not, there just because, nobody wants you and you just want to, they just need an extra body for the summer. I think that they made a choice, and you should feel good about that. And the students should feel confident in knowing that they are being desired to be there. And I think that helps a lot with that calmness factor. But, again, making that initial transition in the world of work can be super scary. But just please, the advice that I give my students is, hey, listen, just take a deep breath. Everything will be fine. You'll be fine. They'll be fine. They're there to take care of you and grow your skill set. And when I have that conversation with students, a lot of times you can just see the level of frustration just drain just right out of there. And they're like, okay, I can do this. So I think, again, that self-efficacy and that self-confidence that we have seen in study after study, the level of self-efficacy and self-assurance is much lower in students today when it comes to making the transition to the world of work than it has been previously. I think that is just that initial step of just saying, okay, I can do it. I'm going to be okay. And just having them be reassured. So that's one of the things that I talk with employers about as they are onboarding their students, to make it a point to sit down with each of their students, either the supervisor or whoever's doing the onboarding, and just reassure them that, hey, we're really happy that you're here. We know that you don't know everything, and we didn't hire you because that. We hired you because you fit our culture. You have a talent or a skill set that we're looking forward to working with. And just those types of comments can really help that student's level of self-efficacy and self-assurance and that finding their place. And I think that's really important, not just for the student to understand that, but also on the other side for the employer to be able to communicate that effectively.
Yeah, and I would add a couple of points to that. I think there's also a tremendous amount of information out there that folks can use to get prepared before they head in, whether that's LinkedIn and finding who's within their network and talking to people about what's the culture all about, and what are some of those unwritten rules that people won't necessarily, you don't want to ask your boss. There's also great input in Glassdoor. What do people say about working at the company? And then just taking a look at what's happening within that industry or with that company. Our favorite friend Google, just taking a look at what can I learn to be smarter and wiser and add as much value as I possibly can from the get-go. And then I do think, to Robert's point, it's about recognizing that you're bringing something different, and that's why they've brought you in. And I think one of the challenges is for folks who don't manage to ramp up quickly. And I would say doing some of that background research and learning some important key pieces allow one intern to distinguish themselves relative to others around them and really stand out within the mix.
That's a good point. So the difference between an intern who does their research and an intern who is, let's say, a little clueless.
Yeah.
Research around the organization will have an easier time. What are some other, aside from that one, what are some other mistakes that interns make?
I would say a big one is one that Robert already touched on, which is not really having a plan as to what am I trying to get out of this experience. I've also seen people who come in with a resume saying they've got a major or experience in one area and come in asking questions that demonstrate that is absolutely not true, right? You're a marketing major and you're asking me about the 4 Ps, then something's probably a little bit off. And so I think, making sure you're doing your homework, you have a plan, but that you're also sure to, A, not fudge on your resume, and B, if you have a little bit, then make sure that you can demonstrate the expertise that you have told them you have on day one and thereafter.
Yeah, one, and I'm also a faculty member, and I've had students that come in late to my class, and that's acceptable in some professors' classes, not mine. And we kind of established that right up front. And again, it's that the student treats the internship like they would treat a college class. Oh, if I miss the first 15 minutes, it's no big deal. Well, yeah, it is a big deal. Kind of, for lack of a better term, just not putting full effort into the work that they're doing, being distracted. You're doing a paper in college, there's multiple gradings, or maybe there's a quiz that you haven't really prepared for. You kind of wing it. You get a C on it, and you're like, oh, thank goodness that's done with. So one of the things that we talk with interns every day is that you've got to bring your A game. You've got to prepare that every single day is like the final exam. And
but no pressure.
But I think that when we talk about that, they tend to like get it. Like, wait a minute, okay, this is a little bit different. So it's the little things like showing up on time and dressing appropriately, and those types of things that are taken for granted in the college environment, the classroom, collegiate environment, that in the professional world you're going to kind of get dinged about. And I think that those are I very rarely seen an intern make a cataclysmic mistake, like putting a virus into the computer system, or anything like that. But it's these little things along the way that tend to add up. And I think that the other end of this is in our both primary, secondary, and now post-secondary schools, we have really eliminated a competitive culture. And shifting to that internship, it becomes a competitive culture because you may be in competition with other interns for a potential job offer. And many times our students come back and they're like, well, why didn't I get the offer? I didn't realize it was competitive. I didn't realize they had 10 of us and not all 10 of us were going to get trophies or the job offer. So helping them to kind of prepare and understand that this is, and it could be competitive. I mean, yeah, there are organizations out there that, hey, I'm going to hire 10 interns and I'm going to hire 10 full-time employees, and this is just kind of the ramp up stage. But that's not the case many times. So helping the student to see that it's not the one big thing, it's the developing those professionalism habits, those little things that they're doing every single day that's going to separate them from others.
So go ahead, Pam.
Anna, can I just, because there's, as I think about then, and I've hired many, many interns over the course of my career, and there are a number of things that stand out for the people that you ultimately make the offer to. But there was a thread of Robert's comment that I think speaks to a broader differentiator, which is the ability to pick up clues and balance. And so I think there are a couple of elements to balance. One is do I ask people questions about this thing, or do I watch to see what's going on and make my best guess, right? Because I think in many cases, there can be sort of this, is it black or white? Do I ask or do I observe? And it's usually some combination of the two. And there's also an element of balance between, do I stay in my lane within my specific job description, or do I reach out and think about how else I can contribute within the organization? And the people who can manage that balance, and it's generally yes, it's some of both. Right. And I think the ability to observe, make decisions, and take some initiative, but not too much, that's an important differentiator for the people that I've wanted to give offers to. And as I think about the September conversations we have in debriefing the interns, often differentiate one who gets the offer from one who doesn't.
Yeah. And when we work with employers and we talk about these things and help the employer to prepare their organization to be a good intern host, we really promote and encourage them to make sure that the intern has not just a supervisor, but also a mentor. And it's that mentor that is able to communicate some of the things that we're talking about here in a very non-supervisory way, but a way that helps that student to understand, when I should speak up, when I should keep my mouth shut, when I should make my best guess, when I need to do additional research. And those are the cultural elements that you can't put on a piece of paper. You can't put on an onboarding, slide deck on the first day, but it's that ongoing relationship with a mentor that can help the student to discern some of those concepts.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that balance that you were talking about, Pam, that's something that is not probably for most of us learned over a summer. That's a balance that we all learn throughout our whole careers. When do I push? When do I not push? And a point I wanted to make about the mentorship. So I really like this idea. I'm going to steal the words that I spoke with Cy Wakeman, who speaks on management and leadership internationally. And she used the term, or she said mentoring should be, employees should see mentoring as more of a kind of a use a crowdsourcing approach. And I really love that. I really love that because if you take the advice of one person, that is one person who has one life of experience. Yeah. But I would say interns should not be afraid to ask their coworkers, other people's bosses, other departments, whoever they're in touch with, if they respect them, for their advice, and ask that same question of 5 different people. See how those different answers are.
I like that, Anna. I was just talking with a friend who's got a son who's going to be a senior in high school, and she was talking about the advice that she was giving him around college decisions and careers and all the rest. And her point was, he's not really listening to me anymore. So if somebody else can intervene,
the same thing.
exactly. Like, okay, he's done. Anything that comes out of my mouth doesn't count. It can be the same thing coming out of somebody else's mouth. And so I think what we see is that students and young adults begin to do this kind of organically. They begin to crowdsource because their parents lose having the best advice. And I think going into an internship and taking the same approach and saying, okay, great, that's one person's opinion. Let me get some different opinions here. It's actually a really natural skill that they have. They can just think about applying it a little bit differently.
I love that. Cool.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about an internship gone bad. What if, for those unfortunate interns who were so excited at the beginning, this is exactly what I want to do with my life, and it's really turned out to be kind of a flop, either due to their manager who isn't supportive, or the employer is not that great, or the position itself turns out to be not that interesting to them. How can
Robert, I don't think those exist. Do you?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, there are some major fails that have happened, and they usually revolve around some type of poor behavior by a supervisor, or some other catastrophic fail on the employer's side, not the student side. But again, that's one of the reasons why students really need to be connected with their faculty at their college or university, or someone within the career center, which is certainly a good individual to connect with, because if it is really going poorly, and usually again we find that why it's going poorly is something that the employer has either done or is not doing. They haven't created the right structure. They're again, inappropriate behavior or something of that nature, that the student needs to be connected to that individual at the college or university to say, hey, this is what's happening. What do I do about it, and how can I handle it? And a lot of times, and I sat in that seat for many years and had to pick up the phone a couple times and say, okay, hey, employer XYZ, tell me more. What's going on here? Because this is the report that I got. Unfortunately, I had some inappropriate situations between a supervisor and an intern. We just yanked the intern right out of that scenario, and try to find something else or something that will protect the student. Very rarely, I think in almost 20 years, I think I've had maybe 3 of those. But a lot of it is that the employer isn't structurally prepared, that there isn't a solid work plan. It is more of here's a to-do list on Monday, or there's just not a lot of organization around the work that's being done. And then, can help the student to feel like, oh, I'm just kind of sitting around doing nothing, and that's not very much fun. And then, so again, even those negative experiences can be great learning experiences, as long as they are, I think, seeking out the conversations and the guidance to say, how do I deal with this? And again, that's one of the big kind of advice pieces that we talk with interns about is, hey, you've got to have that person outside this, there's a career center person who cares about you. There's a faculty member that cares about you. Make sure that they know and you keep in touch with them.
Pam, can you speak to how an intern can still learn and grow during a bad, quote unquote, bad internship?
Absolutely. So Robert used the term, a few fails. I've got 4th grade twins, and one of them came home from school one day and said, Mom, do you know what fail means? And I said, well, of course I do.
A 9-year-old, right?
I'm guessing you mean something else. And she said, it's the first attempt in learning. And I thought, what a great way. And, thank goodness for her teacher who shared that with them. But I love that capture, because what it says is, this is just my first attempt and I'm learning along the way. And I would say from the interns' perspectives, there can be an awful lot of fails, right? I mean, I was a political science major in college. I did an internship when I was at the governor's office in Illinois. And about 2 weeks in, I thought, I hate politics. This is clearly not what I want to do with my career. So that kind of felt like a fail for me. It felt like a big miss, and you can edit this out, but a bit of an oh shit moment. Like, now what? I don't know what the heck I do with this. So I do think it comes back to, and I spent another summer working in a bankruptcy department of a bank. I was doing the same darn thing every day. It was dark. It was depressing. It was boring. And I learned a tremendous amount from that experience of the kind of work that I didn't want to do. And one of the things I often share with folks is if you can figure out which career avenues, doors you want to close based on this experience, you will be so much better off. And it's great to have some that you want to keep open. And this goes back to where Robert started in terms of having this plan. What do I want to get out of it? And how can then I apply those learnings? And even when it's miserable, I promise you, there will be a lot to mine from the experience. And again, it is just that first attempt in learning. It doesn't mean you failed or you missed. It's just your first path, your first step along the path.
Yeah.
And again, that is where the college or university career center advisor or a faculty member really fits in well. We know that when a student is in an internship and they are in our research, we look at student satisfaction levels, and the very highest level of student satisfaction that we see are a group of students who are paid at least minimum wage for the work that they're doing, that they are also earning college credit, which means that there's a faculty member that's involved in the learning process, and that the employer is also has that structured plan for the work that they're doing. So if we look at that like a Venn diagram, that's the sweet spot right in the middle. And what we're talking about now is the role that faculty member or career center person really fills and helps the student to learn from those things. Because, as adult learners, we can kind of understand that, oh, I'm learning even though I'm not having a positive experience, and I can project this forward. And our students today aren't at that level of maturation. And that's where they need that help and that guidance.
Mm-hmm. Pam, you were talking about doors closing and doors opening. I couldn't agree more about the process of elimination. I mean, when you think about the world of opportunities, all the different wrong paths you could go down, it's almost the best case scenario to shut a few down,
Absolutely.
Doors, when you mentioned leave a few, it would be great to leave a couple doors open. Making a good contact, at least one good contact who could be a reference, right? A good reference for you. That's a door that's open. Building soft skills like how to communicate what you want, how to communicate what you need, what's blocking you. Those communication skills, that's a door open. It may not, maybe it won't lead you directly to a job at that company, but it's certainly something you can articulate.
Particularly as you think about the movement of people in work these days, right? So you make a good contact with someone, they may, or just as likely may not be there a year, 2 years, 3 years from now. And as you think about having that contact and their contacts, and this goes back to the networking piece, right? Who else do they know? It doesn't really matter what company or job they're tied to, because it's just as likely that that's going to change over time. And so, it's all about don't burn bridges, even if you don't like the industry and the company and what have you. Recognize that you likely, as well as people that you're working with, are going to move and ebb and flow throughout their careers.
Yeah, if there's anything to take away from this conversation, it's don't burn bridges.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Is there anything else that you guys want to add? I'm thinking in terms of, the last two questions that I had, you can maybe take this however you want, choose which one you want to answer. Red flags that an intern can watch for that signals that, oh, this actually isn't worth it. And Robert, that was kind of where you were going, but it sounds like it's probably not very common. And then Or I'm thinking advice for interns to really learn how to articulate, what have I learned? What am I learning here? Right? So that metacognition.
Right. Well, one of the things that in experiential learning that we kind of talk about, the 4 watchwords of experiential learning: plan, do, reflect, project. And so when I'm working with a student that on the academic side, we talk about, okay, what's the plan? And then we've kind of talked about that. And what's the do? Okay, what did you actually do? What are the tangible things that you were able to work on? And then I said, well, and how did you do that? Tell me about that project that you work on, and get them to reflect upon that. And then the next question is project, and that is, how do you think you can use this in the future? How do you think this impacts you 5 years from now? And when we follow that kind of really simple model of plan, do, reflect, project, we find that metacognition of learning starts to happen. And again, we are developing habits, and habits are hard to start sometimes. But if we can get students to continue to think in that framework of I'm going to plan the work, I'm going to do the work, I'm going to reflect on what I do, and I'm going to project it forward, I can only hope, and I do believe that the next generation of our workforce is going to be fundamentally different, because they will have, I mean, I work with executives that have a difficult time with plan, do, reflect, project. And so if we are developing them in 19, 20, 21-year-olds as they make this transition in the world of work, where are they going to be 10, 15 years from now? And I can only believe that it's going to make an impact on how we approach work, and how our employees are much different, and their level of kind of understanding the bigger picture is just going to be so much better.
Yeah, let's go change the world.
And I would add that let's do that. And it's also about translation. It's about taking the experiences that folks have had and translating what the impact of that is. And I had recently written this blog post about this woman who runs a summer camp, and for her college students who do lots of different things there, at the end of the summer, what she does is has them go through what they were responsible for over the summer. And then she works with them to translate then what those experiences mean in terms of the soft skills or hard skills that they've gained. And that is invaluable for folks who have limited work experience to say, I had this experience, and this is why it matters out in the work world. This is why it matters to you, my potential future employer. And I think many of us, as folks who have experience in the work world, or managers or what have you, that is a tremendous value to offer our interns. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it provides them with just a very different perspective of how they can put these experiences in their pocket and carry them to their next interview or class and what have you.
That's great. Good.
In a class I teach, it's called Professional Launch, and it's a senior class, right before our students graduate. And one of the exercises that we do, we talk about our experiences as bricks, and we actually do this exercise where they actually draw out these bricks, and we put them out on the table and those bricks are our life experiences. And what you're talking about, that translation, is really the mortar that holds those bricks together. So we try to help the student to piece those sometimes different concepts together, those different experiences together, to start to build that wall, which is that wall of experience. So as students as we in academe try to help students unpack those bricks and organize them and say, okay, how do we put these things together? I think that again is transcending the quality of employee that we are developing for the next generation of our workforce.
Thank you, both of you. Great bits of advice. Lots of good sound bites in there.
Good.